Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our weekly roundup of the latest news in blockchain gaming. Today is Friday, the 8th of November. I'm your host, Jenny Jordan. With me is co host John Jordan. Hi, John. How are you doing?
How are you?
Good. Yeah, all good. Good. So let's start off this week by looking at a opinion piece that we published actually from MetaKing Studios CEO David Johansson. MetaKing is building the kind of medieval grand strategy game Block Lords, and so as a developer, obviously, he's got great experience in the industry. I think they've been building that game since 2019, haven't they? So he talks from personal point of view. You know, he's a little bit discouraged about where the industry has been headed, and kind of calls for unity, I guess, from both developers, journalists, including us, have a responsibility as well as investors. So, what sort of key takeaways did you get from that? From what he said, and what did you sort of think of it?
Yeah, I think it's sort of widely sort of reflective of some of the trends that have been going on this year. I guess particularly among what we might call the sort of more serious blockchain game makers. So I think the year seemed like it was going to start off, really sort of buoyant, partly because of crypto prices, but sort of throughout the year, crypto prices obviously have continued to do really well. So Bitcoin's just hit an all-time high off the back of Trump's re-election. Whereas the gaming sector, sort of the air's sort of come out of it pretty quickly, really from March, April last year, and even within the game sector, the focus has shifted towards there's sort of meme coins in general have done really well this year. So there's a sort of meme coin thing and some gaming meme coin stuff, but equally, as we'll discuss a bit later on, some of the stuff towards sort of Telegram as a sort of marketing channel, and that's sort of related at the moment, sort of related to meme coins. So a lot of the sort of Telegram tokens, the tokens that are being launched on the Ton blockchain are sort of, if not exactly meme coins, sort of feel quite sort of mememic, I suppose. And I think if you're someone like David Johansson, who's building this really massive sort of PC game that's been out, I mean, it's been out in early access for a year now. And I mean, it's interesting in the sense that they sort of had their own, it wasn't a Telegram game, but they had their own sort of light companion game called Block Lords Dynasty on the base blockchain that was really successful while they were sort of doing this token giveaway sort of thing. I think got up to 130,000 daily active unique wallets, and then basically went down to zero once they stopped giving away the token. And I think it's probably quite frustrating because it is actually, that game is actually, if you are playing as I am the Block Lords game, that Block Lords Dynasty game, is actually quite integrated. It does sort of feed through, and you can move characters around, and it's sort of fairly well thought through. But I guess to a degree he's feeling slightly frustrated that that sort of the mind share of the industry is sort of elsewhere at the moment. which I guess it's a lot of people who are making those sort of games are in that sort of same situation. But I guess that's partly why this stuff is hard. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And I guess it's sort of, as we sort of used to say in the bear market, it's the build through the bear, or it's sort of that's how the companies that we believe are going to sort of create the best sort of products in the long term are going to sort of force people to they're going to find players by sort of forcing them through very hard sort of situations, and those people are still going to like the game enough to still keep playing it. I Block Lords is interesting in the sense that it is a super hard game. I mean, I've been playing it for a year, sort of off and on, and it is it's always very frustrating as a game. It's very hard on you as a player. It takes away a lot of your resources and stuff.
A lot of your pressure, basically.
So I've done some videos about how frustrating it is. His sort of point of view is we have to make it really hard at the beginning to sort of test it and see, we can make it easier as time goes on, but we can't make it easy and then make it hard. You have to do it that way. And I guess, for him, they actually do have quite a big sort of update coming out, which is the first time you can do sort of battles. Previously, it's just been like a farming and resource trading simulator. Whereas now they're having battles coming in. So that's quite a big change. So hopefully that will sort of, if not, and it won't necessarily bring in more people, I think. I mean, to a degree, maybe it will, but it'll certainly sort of re-energize the sort of I don't know how many people are playing. Tens of thousands of people are probably playing that game. And the other thing is, they'll probably have a new season pass, so they've been doing a few season passes, and that re-engages your audience because you're getting more stuff. It's more exciting. So yeah, I think it's a sort of interesting sort of someone sort of venting their frustrations a little bit, I suppose.
Yeah, and interestingly, now we're coming towards the end of 2024. We're also looking back at the predictions game developers had, not only game developers, various industry experts at the end of 2023. Actually, it's interesting because a lot of predictions then were about big game studios are going to release these big games. We're going to see the first sort of big breakout game. And obviously we might still. It's almost 2 months left to go, but we haven't really, some would argue maybe off the grid. It's kind of on the way there. But in terms of, say, Blocklords itself, he's been fairly open, actually, David Johnson himself, about the Blocklords dynasty and how that was actually coming from pressure from investors, that they wanted to see high numbers. And that then is sort of the focus has been very much about driving virality and, like you say, meme coins on Ton and Telegram, and building these sort of really short-term experiences that drive these kind of really, really explosive growth, but then die off almost as quickly, compared to deep, qualitative gameplay. And you can understand his frustrations and his sort of discouragement from that point of view. But he is, overall, we should say, he is still very bullish, and he has great hopes for the industry that things will get better if we all pull ourselves together. Moving on to Ton and Telegram, as we've already mentioned, the South Korean game developer Delabs Games, which is sprung out of 433 Creative Labs. We announced last week, actually, that they had already unveiled their pivot to publishing mid-core games on Telegram to stand out as sort of those hyper-casual games. They've seen a sort of opportunity, which they call sort of quite a short window now to move to that platform. So they initially launched their game Rumble Racing Star on Polygon. They then moved to Arbitrum, and now they moved to Ton and Telegram. This week they also announced that they have in fact been receiving some funding from Ton Foundation and some private investments, and that the initial game they are going to launch is going to be Ragnarok, the classic South Korean IP Ragnarok. Interestingly, that's already been done in kind of the blockchain space on Ronin with Ragnarok Monster World, but this is with different focus on gameplay. This is going to be more on the sort of maze labyrinth type mode. So took us through a little bit more about Ragnarok, I suppose, and kind of in the bigger context of them sort of also pivoting to Telegram.
Yeah. So as you say, sort of Delabs sort of have also been working on this sort of pivot to Telegram for a while. It had its first game out of a baseball game. It was probably about a couple of months ago, wasn't it? That Giga Chad.
Giga Chad.
Yeah. And I think that was a reworking of maybe an existing Kakao game anyway. So they said they think that the big, as you say, that there is a window of opportunity for people releasing mid-core games, so slightly deeper sort of experiences on Telegram rather than these sort of hyper-casual tap games that we've seen. So they did actually announce also that they were bringing a game called Boxing Star to Telegram. That will be sort of later, that'll be Q2 next year. And that's actually one of 437's mobile games. 433, sorry. So that's actually, I've not heard of it before, but if you look at it, it's sort of like a sort of boxing RPG. So there is a very sort of simple boxing gameplay. So you sort of, obviously put together combos, and it's like a boxing game you'd expect. But the majority of the game is around sort of leveling up your boxers and having lots of boxers and putting different equipment on them and all that sort of stuff. So that's coming. And it'll be interesting actually because that game looks like it plays in landscape mode, and obviously Telegram games are portrait mode. So quite how that's going to work, I don't know. it's quite a lot of art reworking. Ragnarok is sort of interesting in the sense that it's a really well known sort of gaming IP from South Korean company Gravity, and as you say, that there are quite a lot of different genres of Ragnarok games out already. Just in terms of Web 2, there's loads of MMORPGs, sort of 2D stuff, and but various different. Ragnarok is sort of an IP that you can do lots of different things with. Effectively, it's so big now. It's a 20-year-old IP. You can sort of maybe not make a shooter out of it, but pretty much everything else. So they were quite coy about exactly what sort of game they were making. As you said, they sort of mentioned this sort of maze-like sort of elements, and they talked a bit about using the social aspects of Telegram. But I mean, it's not really amazing detective work. But I did a sort of a reverse image search on Google for the image they supplied for this Ragnarok game, and it actually came up with a game called, well, I guess it's a Korean name, but it seemed like either the Labyrinth of Ragnarok or Ragnarok Labyrinth, and it seems like that was actually a NFT game, an NFT based game that Gravity put out in 2022. I'd never heard of it. I don't really know any details of it, and they launched it, and then they've since canned it. So obviously that wasn't terribly successful, but clearly there was a game there that had some blockchain integration, and obviously for Delabs, they don't want to be starting from scratch. They're all about they've got a short time frame. So obviously they're looking for sort of existing games that they can maybe do a bit of work on, a bit of porting work, but not do too much work on. So it seems like this Ragnarok game, it's sort of a little bit weird in the sense of why did it fail? So you're sort of taking a game that didn't work out and hoping it works by putting it on another platform, and obviously it may do. It's a different sort of time now. So we sort of wait to see exactly what happens. But as you say, it is interesting that there is this Ragnarok Monsters World game on Ronin. I mean, that's a sort of more like a MOBA sort of game, like a Clash Royale type game. So very different genre. So I guess we'll see fairly early next year whether Delabs pivot is going to work out, and whether these sort of deeper RPGs are going to get people engaged on Telegram. My gut feeling is sort of Telegram. The games I play on Telegram tend to be quite short duration ones. You don't really want to be sitting and playing an hour long game on Telegram, although obviously you could do that, but it's much more sort of idle type game. So quite how they build that idle element in, but we don't know because we haven't seen the game. But getting that balance right, I guess, between having the depth they want to have deep engagement, but also fitting it into what most people will be doing, which is playing a sort of a gameplay wise a fairly simple game on mobile. I guess that's going to be the sweet spot.
It's an interesting question. So I say, why would it work this time around? If it is like you say, they sort of take that concept of an old game that was canned, but equally we do see that distribution platform and accessibility matters, obviously, in the gaming space in general and in Web3 too. So we have actually seen that with 9 Chronicles, which is now coming up to a year since they launched 9 Chronicles M on mobile, previously run only for PC. It's coming up to its first anniversary. I think it is on the 20th of November. And ahead of that, they have published some figures on how the game has done since the mobile launch. And that has shown, the token staking has increased significantly and gone up. Clearly, they've still struggled, they say, with player retention. But it does show that kind of distributing on a different platform has an impact on the game. So you go on, tell us more about that.
Yeah, so as you say, I mean, actually the PC version has been out for about 4 years. I remember playing it sort of originally, one of the very earliest blockchain games. and it was very unstable then. It sort of runs on their own blockchain, which is always, has strengths and weaknesses, but makes it a bit more problematic. But as you say, just in terms of launching a version on mobile, so it's actually quite complicated. They actually have two different blockchains now, and so I play it on mobile and PC, so you can play it on both. There's slightly different functionality on depending on which one you play on. But they've basically, they've sort of more than doubled their daily player base. The amount of game tokens staked in the game was up 60%. The reason that you basically stake tokens into the game, and then you get sort of rewarded with in-game items. And over time they've made that more maybe not lucrative. I was going to say lucrative. Maybe lucrative is not quite the right word, but they've sort of, as they've bought out more in-game sort of currencies and stuff, then the easiest way to get them is by staking. So that's sort of one reason behind that. And as you say, they did sort of make a comment on they'd done some sort of collaborations. I guess the biggest one was the one with Animoca Brands Mochaverse. And I think they got quite a lot of people into that, but the problem with those sort of collaborations is people were doing that to get RP points in Mochaverse when Mochaverse token was sort of going through its sort of pre-launch. So people, I think, were sort of playing Nine Chronicles, not for Nine Chronicles, but for Mochaverse, and I think they said they were sort of disappointed that they were sort of getting players into the game, and I think there was a special sort of level you sort of had to complete for Mochaverse. But then people weren't then sort of continuing through the game. But I think that was maybe not necessarily because of Nine Chronicles, more to do with they were playing it because they wanted to get the Mochaverse rewards. But in general, if you look at I think there's get it right. There are 8 different sort of in the campaign mode. There are 8 different sort of levels that you go through. Obviously, progressively harder. And if you look at the distribution that they put out, there's very few people in the first 3. Very small percentage of players in the first 3 levels because you sort of go through that quite quickly, and then the majority of players are sort of in the middle bit, so sort of levels 4, 5, 6. I've just got to level 7 actually, so only this week I got to level 7, so I'm quite happy. So there's only like 8% in the top 7 and 8, and there's only like 1% in level 8. You have to be sort of really powerful to do that. So it was interesting. They was sort of they looking to the year ahead. They were sort of saying how they wanted to get players sort of deeper into the game, whereas I felt actually quite a lot of players were quite deep in the game. But they were sort of pointed out that they have a tension between making it too easy for new players and sort of downgrading all the assets that sort of OG players have built up over the years. And for some of them, they may have spent a lot of money, or obviously spent a lot of time, and you don't want to sort of have inflationary pressure that means that those assets are somehow not worth, or seen as being worth a lot less than they were when you got them. Which sort of happens in these games anyway. Over time, people get more stuff, so it becomes harder. They give them new stuff, and actually, some things they have done, they bought in new. So one of the things you can do is you can collect things and then craft weapons and armor, and then you can actually sell that on a marketplace. And they bought in a new sort of custom crafting mechanic that actually has a new sort of resource that you need to get. The easiest way to get that is staking tokens, and then you can actually sort of craft these new sort of weapons, and some of them are sort of aesthetically quite weird. Like one of them's like a swordfish, sort of almost like a comedy thing. It's not a sword; it's a swordfish. So they're trying to build in some sort of more sort of fun into it from that point of view. But it's still, it's a game that's doing over 100,000 daily active unique wallets, which I think is, quite. There's not many blockchain games that sort of are sustaining that level of usage. So from that point of view, it's going in the right direction. I mean, the token price, like a lot of tokens, has not been very good this year. I think it's halved. So there's lots of different moving parts on this thing. But in general, I play it quite a lot, and I quite like some of the way they've integrated the blockchain and non-blockchain payment elements. So you can do on the mobile side, you can do in-app purchases. They have a battle pass, and so I think it's quite a. I don't think it'll ever get to like 1 million users. It is an idle RPG, and those are not, the sort of biggest genre. And the blockchain stuff is a bit confusing because it's their own blockchain, so you have this whole weird thing about saving private keys. It's not quite the same way as you now do it with saying using immutable passport or something like that. It's harder. So, but anyway, yeah, they've had a good year.
Anyway, happy birthday to 9 Chronicles M. We've also got Pixels, actually, which is also sort of turning 1 since its migration to Ronin, which we'll get back to a bit more next week. So stay tuned. Now, after its Boom Season 1 Boom airdrop campaign during the summer, Boomland has launched its Season 2 Boom airdrop, which contains 1 million worth of Boom. However, this time the campaign is launched via Game 7's loot drop. So users will sort of have to register on Game 7's portal first to take part in this season, which could be seen as a bit of a kind of onboarding hurdle, I suppose, if you're trying to make onboarding more seamless. But yeah, so in essence, Boomland migrated their Hunters on Chain game to the Immutable ecosystem. However, the Boom token is not live on Immutable CKVM yet. So players are basically earning Boom bags, which contain sort of future Boom tokens that will be live kind of after the token is launched. Is that right?
Yeah. So the initial Season 1 of the airdrop was pretty successful. I think they had about 65,000 active wallets, and that was all sort of handled. They actually did quite a good job. That was sort of handled within their own sort of web interface, so you could see quite a lot of what was going on, and you got more sort of points for how many hunters you own. So it's in the Hunters on Chain game, which is their main game. And then there were daily sort of missions to do where you earn points, and then there were sort of like a season-long sort of missions that you sort of unlocked. And so I had factions, so you could join a faction, and there was sort of stuff split between factions as well. So it was all, it's pretty good. It's pretty well done, actually. And as you say, the problem they have is they can't give away the Boom token yet because the Boom token is not live on Immutable. It's only live on Polygon. So they gave away, it's quite clever, they gave away these things called boom bags, which are NFTs. And you can trade them like NFTs. So they have a sort of price attached to them. And you can actually sort of burn them to get what they call off-chain Boom. So it's basically you need the reason you need Boom in Hunters on Chain is to level up your hunters. So you sort of they get XP in the game and they get to a certain point, and then you have to spend Boom to get them to the next level. So the way they did it with the Boom bags was there was a financial value there, so you could trade them. There's also a utility that if you wanted to level up your characters in the game, which obviously most people would want to do because it's more powerful, then you could sort of they did this sort of off-chain on-chain sort of switch. So that's worked out fairly well. So as you say, the Season 2 is giving away $1 million worth of Boom via Boom bags again. It's gone through Game 7. So Game 7 is sort of a big gaming DAO, actually part of what was called BitDAO? Can't remember. Now called Mantle. And they have their own Ethereum-based L3, I guess, called Mantle. Could be an L2, not quite sure. Anyway, Game 7 are an investor in Boomland, so that's sort of where those things link up. Yeah, as you say, it's a bit more complicated. It sort of works for Game 7 because they're bringing in sort of new players. They're bringing in the Boomland people into their ecosystem to earn the Boom. It has, I guess, created more friction. So when I looked, there was about 20,000 people had started playing this week. So, we'll see how, I guess, over time how it goes. And I would say the technical integration is nowhere near as nice as when it was just native within the Boomland website. So it's sort of similar quests, but just not as elegant. You have to sort of, it doesn't sort of tell you whether you've fulfilled any of these. You sort of have to randomly press on a submit button, and it has to then go and check the database and blah 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 blah. So that's not so nice. The Boom I think the Boom bags are being given to the top. There's a leaderboard. I think is it top 3,000? I can't remember. something like that. I think it is a sort of tighter criterion, I think, for who gets what. Again, so maybe that sort of takes off some of the shine, and maybe just because it's a season ones are always more exciting than season twos, aren't they? Because season one is like great. So we'll see. I mean, I think for Boomland, it's now really this is the build up to getting the Boom token and everything live on Immutable, and then being able to sort of really market it, because it's a blockchain version, Web3 version of a fairly successful Web2 game. I mean, I've been playing both versions of the game for a couple of years. I can't remember. I have some quite nice hunters. I think it's a really, it's not the sort of deepest game in the world, but it's a really sort of solid, good, enjoyable game. There's various different modes. And it's demonstrated that it can sort of sustain audiences and retain them and monetize them, all that sort of stuff. So
should it maybe point out that you're a strategic advisor?
Yeah, advisor to them. So it's not not they need me, I don't think, but So and Boomland, they have a sort of schedule of other games sort of coming out. So while Hunters on Chain is their key game, they have these other games that are sort of bringing in, which are sort of more lightly blockchain integrated over time. Probably some of those will get deeper integrated, and actually, they're also playing around with other stuff. So they're doing a whole bunch of stuff on Telegram as well, sort of bringing their sort of marketing sort of flow into the game.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That leads us nicely onto the next topic, which is Telegram again, and Immutable's deepened kind of integration with Telegram. So Immutable in itself, like one of the largest blockchain ecosystems and platforms, sort of gaming-centric blockchains, that they are. I've already partnered with Telegram previously, but now they are deepening that sort of technical integration, so that game developers who within Immutable's ecosystem who also want to launch mini games on Telegram can integrate their wallet solution, like Immutable's Passport, into the games on Telegram, and in that way sort of bring their Telegram communities over to Immutable's blockchain ecosystem. So that's kind of very largely explained, but that's kind of the essence of it. It just shows that strategic kind of expansion, I suppose, with Telegram, which most people are embracing these days. But that's sort of the ideal technical solutions for someone like Boomland and those sort of game developers who do want to perhaps scale or funnel their Telegram players and users into their main games on a different blockchain.
Yeah, and we're seeing that. I mean, that's people. If people already have an existing ecosystem, then obviously they don't want to be using Ton. So while Ton is very heavily integrated with Telegram, we are seeing as mentioned before, the Tatsumiko people are doing a Ronin based, getting people to connect their Ronin wallet with the Telegram game, and I guess we'll see Telegram as just a viral marketing channel, and then you can sort of connect through to whatever sort of other blockchain you want. Because Ton is, Ton's okay, I suppose, but it doesn't. It's not as deep, I guess, as some other sort of existing ecosystems. So you would use it as marketing and then get people into where you actually want to get them.
Now, this week you've been talking to Godzilla Games and Avalanche Gaming's director. I can't remember his name. Andrew Cooper. Because from Godzilla Games, it was what's his name, John?
Theodore.
Theodore Agav. Sorry, I should have looked it up. Anyway, you've been talking to them about Off the Grid and the launch, which was less than a month ago. It's actually exactly 4 weeks ago now, isn't it? 8th of October. About how the game has performed since launch, the sort of initial marketing, and where it's going next. So, talk us through your conversation with.
They were pretty happy, I think, about it. Obviously, they had the big sort of opening weekend launch where they did the sort of sponsored stuff with Ninja and Shroud and Tim the Tapman and all that sort of stuff, and that went really well. They had 800,000 wallets created on there. It runs on its own blockchain called Guns. And it's actually quite interesting. The opening weekend was pretty good, and then the rest of that week was pretty rubbish. Dropped off quite a lot. But then, and we saw there was a big discussion that they spent all this money on marketers, and then obviously those people weren't then marketing the game. And you can see very clearly in terms of Twitch streams and Twitch viewing, it was massive the opening weekend, and then there's been very little since. But interestingly, the sort of a week after launch, the second weekend after launch, that they're just the organic audience was sort of there. So they're actually quite sustaining now, about 500,000 daily active unique wallets, which makes it the most popular game. So it's bigger than Pixels now, partly because Pixels has sort of dropped down. Again, you say sort of very early days, but it is on two massive platforms. It's on PlayStation 5 and Xbox. So there's hundreds of millions of people playing that and checking out new games. I looked at the sort of they've had about 7.5 million wallets created. So you assume everyone gets a wallet who plays. So you've had millions of people checking out the game. Obviously, you expect to see retention sort of dropping off quite quickly, but the retention's actually about sort of 10% of active wallets. I think last time I looked was sort of 7% of. So 7% of all the wallets ever created, 7% of those players are still playing. A month after the initial launch. So obviously that number tends to go down over time because that's just the way that sort of the maths works out. But I think you have to say that it has been pretty good for them, and as Theodore pointed out, quite how you measured this, but he said we've only launched sort of one part of one mode, so we've only launched 20% of the game. Basically, there's a lot of other modes to come, other parts of modes to come. But there's obviously a big for a single player campaign mode. So I suppose 60-hour character mode, 60-hour sort of narratively driven sort of mode to play. It's sort of the and you assume when that comes in, obviously people are maybe not going to finish it, but people are going to get a few hours into that. I mean, if you're anything like me, I played the extraction shooter bit at the moment and just got killed all the time. It's just really
No, I was going to say that's the kind of mode that would bring someone like you and me maybe
a really unpleasant experience. And actually, it's very, very. I mean, all these things are very hardcore sort of experiences, but there was no tutorial or anything. I mean, I'm sure it's just using the same standard keys, but I'm not someone who plays a lot of extraction shooters, so I'm just fiddling around trying to go. Well, how do I do anything? How do I fire a gun, sort of thing? How do I pick up a gun? And by the time I've worked that out, I've been shot.
Our sons would probably do better.
Yeah. So that all makes it even more sort of, in a sense, impressive that they're doing 500,000 dailies. Obviously, with all these sort of things, you have to look at it over several months of gameplay, and sort of actually the thing I think with Off the Grid that will be over time that becomes more important is. And as we see with Pixels, it's not the number of players on a daily basis is sort of a nice metric, but it is a bit of a vanity metric in the sense you can manipulate it by giving away tokens or whatever you are doing. Obviously for any business, if you're not just games, but anything is how much how are you breaking even? Are you making profit? So obviously you don't have to do it on day one, but as the months go on, Gunzilla is a big company. It's raised, whatever it is, $100 million. It doesn't get that money for free. Investors want to see at some point a return on that. So the question for them will be how can they start to bring in monetization, which they do have battle passes in or a subscription pass in at the moment. But that's what they have to, obviously again a balance between sustaining the player numbers who are there and then getting more of them to spend money. And almost, if they were, in a sense, if they weren't getting these big numbers now, you would think that project is sort of in trouble because it needs to, it needs to be generating certainly tens of millions of dollars, or certainly if you're generating millions of dollars a month of revenue, at some point, I'd say fairly soon.
You did mention that. Yeah, you did mention there in passing that Off the Grid is now the most popular blockchain games in terms of amount of active wallets. So compare that to Pixels, which has been throughout 2024 by miles, just nothing has been near it. But so this is for two reasons. Obviously, Off the Grid has grown significantly, but Pixels has also downscaled, and that's been intentional from the developers who have been trying to completely erase bots from the game. Part of them restructuring their entire reward systems with chapter, what did they call it, 2.5, that's currently running, right, that launched in the summer. They did manage, they lost 2/3 of game of players just by changing the reward structure, and this has been sort of their ongoing kind of intentions, right? 2024 really. So more of that sort of next week, but that's been an interesting thing to see in this sort of where everyone's really chasing big numbers and kind of growing the DAOs. Pixel is just going to say, well, we're not interested in having bots and impressive numbers. We want real players. And actually, despite dropping DAOs, they have grown in terms of pixels tokens generated and spent in game. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, as I say, that's fundamental to any business. A lot of these things are sort of VC funded. A lot of games tend to be VC funded because it's a lot of upfront sort of costs you need to do, years of development and hiring expensive people, and there's marketing clearly as well. But at some point, a game shuts down because it can't generate. It's not providing the experience that players will spend money to keep having, and at the level of sort of ongoing costs that it is sort of required to keep servers on and keep events happening and keep marketing going and all that sort of stuff. So that's it's a very basic sort of cash flow situation for any game. And I think for a long time, everyone in the blockchain game space sort of sat in this slightly magical world where sort of crypto money sort of grew on trees and it didn't really matter. Fundamentals didn't really matter because you could always your tokens were worth billions of dollars and blah 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 blah. And to some degree, still there is still, I think, for the best crypto games, they are inventing money. That they are basically coming up with digital assets that people are going, this is worth something, rather than nothing. And that's really hard to do, which is why most blockchain games fail. But fundamentally, your players have to be spending money or spending some form of crypto that probably isn't your crypto. They have to be prepared to spend USDC or ETH or something to get something in your game to enjoy your game more, and then you have to be able to use that revenue to pay people to maintain your game. To a degree, I think we sort of lost track of that, and I think Pixels has been actually quite good at focusing now really for the last 6 months on this is the sort of revenue we are generating from things like their VIP subscriptions and this sort of thing. And and obviously they're a company who probably could, they're not raised very much VC money, they could probably raise a whole bunch more. They're being quite conservative on that basis, and they're a very small team, and they are, from that point of view, they're not making an impressive game like Off the Grid, but their game cost, I don't know, making up numbers now, their game cost £2 million to develop, and Off the Grid cost 50 million. And so, which one's going to find it more easy to be profitable? And sometimes spending a lot of money obviously means you can drive a lot of people in through marketing, because it's like, wow, this game looks amazing, it's the best game out there, and that in and of itself helps you to do marketing compared to a $2 million pixel social browser game. But when it comes to some nuts and bolts of how much money you need to generate a month to break even and keep going, at some point that reality has to come into play as well.
No, they're very actively talking about sustainability and actually putting practical measures in place to create that sustainability, whereas a lot of game developers just seem to sit there and hope, we launched the game and then we just hope for sustainability to magically sort of happen somehow by itself. Anyway, let's move on to Wild Forest, another game on Ronin, which has it actually launched. That'll be also about a year ago.
No.
I think they
July.
Oh, is it not? Oh, okay, take that back. Sorry. Closed beta was in about a year ago, I think, wasn't it? So January 2024, maybe. Anyway, launched in July 2024 on Ronin. Sorry, a mobile and PC actually strategy RTS, which so I mean they've been running their ahead of their token launch. The token hasn't launched yet, has it? No. So in building up towards that, they have had these airdrop campaigns running, and partly due to that, they've seen this kind of high player levels and good retention as well, which is over 100,000. It's them and Aperon, I think, that are also regularly over 100,000. But you think this game sort of has qualities beyond just it's kind of like a lot of games. You basically think there's more to this game than just promised tokens.
It's always difficult when you're a sort of pre-token airdrop, because it's very hard to work out. Clearly the incentives of lots of people will be to get the token airdrop. So after tokens live, it would be amazing if there wasn't a drop off of audience. I don't know if that's going to be 10%, 50%, or 75%, or who knows. But I do think of actually all the games. There's quite a lot of games coming out on Ronin in various forms, and maybe it's just a personal thing that I do think this is probably the one that I think sort of has the most sort of solid appeal, and pretty experienced team who've made these sort of these sort of mobile strategy games. Dozens of them, not dozens of them. They made a couple of them before, fairly successfully. I mean, not enormous, massive $billion hits, but just fairly. They're going back to what we said before. Fairly, experienced small teams, know what they're doing. Don't get too carried away with sort of feature creep, but just I just kind of get a. And it's sort of funny because I always keep thinking, I should play this game more, and I don't play it more, partly because it's a PvP game, so it's sort of quite intense to play. But I think it's sort of in a sense a sort of an interesting test case, which is why I sort of brought it up really. That it has grown, in the 6 months to 100,000 daily active unique wallets. Not enormous, but clearly not nothing. And I think they haven't said. I don't think they even officially said when their token is out. I think it's out this year. But that's sort of one where I would be really interested to see how it plays out, because we have seen, I'll say loads of stuff on Ronin going live. So Ragnarok, Monster World, as we sort of spoke about, that has gone live, and it's did really well on its sort of closed beta. But and it's just entered like a playtest, an airdrop playtest yesterday. So we'll see how those numbers played out. But stuff is starting to happen on Ronin, and that game's fairly polished. But I just don't think it sort of captures the imagination in the same way something like a Wild Forest will. I mean, obviously, it could be proven totally wrong on that. But that's the sort of at the moment. If people say what's the sort of game on Ronin to highlight, that would be the one I would go for.
Okay, let's stay tuned. Right, on that note, we're going to finish off, but thank you very much for tuning in today, and we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.